Welcome to Rational Alchemy TV.
Here are some things that I've never seen. A ghost or an angel or a prescient dream. A UFO photo at a decent zoom. Jesus standing there like he was me or you. A best-selling psychic win the lottery. A double-blind test for homeopathy. A proselytizer who made me think. Or a can of beer I didn't want to drink. I even like 'em warm. See, what I want is knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun. The things that I want, they're knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun.
Welcome to Rational Alchemy. My name is Nigel Aves and I'm the host. I'd like to introduce to you a guy that I have known now for a long time, even though we haven't really bumped into each other a lot, but he is the creator of our theme song. Ben, why don't you do a quick introduction?
Hi, I'm Ben Prytherch.
Prytherch.
So I got a very strange name. It rhymes with jerk, is the way you remember it. And yeah, I did the theme song. I guess it wasn't meant to be the theme song. I was just singing about the stuff I was interested in a very long time ago on KRFC, and y'all heard it and grabbed it, and I've been honored to have it play at the beginning of Rational Alchemy.
I believe we did go on bended knees and ask permission first before using it.
And you really had to work hard to extract that permission out of me.
Well, it's most kind of you to let us use that as our theme song for all those radio podcasts that we did, and of course now that Rational Alchemy TV, using it on the TV show as well. So, did you enjoy the beginning of Rational Alchemy, the way that I'd edited it?
Oh yes, with the cans of beer appearing at the line. Yeah, that's nice.
That's good. Good. I wouldn't want you to think I was ruining your music. So, are you still into music?
Yes. Yeah, I got a little recording studio in my basement. I still write songs and record them and toss them on the internet when I have time. And I got a band called Mama Lenny and the Remedy up in Fort Collins that plays pretty consistently.
Excellent.
And, yeah.
So you've really kept on with the old, musical front.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Good. Have you done any more live at lunches at KRFC?
Probably one or two since, but it's
wow.
tough to get time. So my full band never has time because we all work during the day. And it's tough to get everybody to take off. But for my own songs and my solo material, it's been a little bit. I should get back in there.
Right. Now, of course, the way that we met originally on the old radio show was because we were purely skeptical.
Right.
So here we are, about 8 or 9 years later. I can't quite remember how long it is now, but. Have your thoughts changed at all along the lines of what's happening in skepticism?
Oh, so I don't keep up with it all that well, but I've gone into statistics since we last talked.
Oh, wow.
So I went to Colorado State. I got a master's degree in statistics, and I teach there full time now. And so there are a lot of issues in that field that I think are relevant to the skeptical line of thought that I find maybe more interesting than the usual, going after homeopaths and faith healers, and I mean those people are full of it, of course, but it's not very exciting to me to explain and get into arguments as to whether or not homeopathy is real. It's more to me, if you're going to be a skeptic, you should be able to focus your skeptical faculties towards questions that you're not quite sure about. It's more interesting to me if you say, well, that could be true, but maybe it's not.
Right.
Let's have a closer look, as opposed to that's obvious nonsense.
Yes, and of course so much of it is obvious nonsense, but the trouble is it's believed by so many.
Right.
So that's where the critical thinking, of course comes in. So tell me a little bit more about the statistical side of things. So what exactly do you look at?
As far as the things that I'm interested in that are pertinent to skepticism, statistics there are tools within our field for trying to discover I guess signals out of noise would be the best way of putting it. So we have, we're studying data, and data is noisy. You're collecting observations on whatever it is you're collecting observations on, and there's a lot of apparent randomness. Whether you believe in randomness or not is up to you, but there's at least a lot of what appears to be randomness. And we have all these tools that are meant to detect real phenomena amongst all the randomness, or detect the signal amongst all the noise. And
So hold on, just to make sure I've
Sure.
got this straight. So it's really a little bit like CT, the way that they capture the noise of the universe, and they look for something that
Sure.
makes sense within that noise.
yes,
Okay.
yes, and hopefully you're motivated by a theory ahead of time. Hopefully you have
Yes.
some idea of what sort of pattern it is you're looking for. But I mean, a very, very simple example, if you're doing a trial on a potential drug, I've got a drug that's supposed to help alleviate anxiety, and I've got a control group and I've got a treatment group, and you come up with some measure of anxiety. I don't know how you do it. You give people stimulus that would usually make them anxious, and then see how they respond. Their biological sort of latent or I should say, sort of like maybe proxy variables or ways
Okay.
of trying to assess how anxious someone is, or give them a questionnaire and they fill out, how anxious they are. And then you have these two groups, and you say, well, we've got all the readings for anxiety from the control group and the treatment group, and wouldn't it be lovely if everybody in the treatment group was less anxious than everybody in the control group? Wouldn't that be fantastic? But it never ever happens.
Right.
And so you're trying to say, well, are the people in the treatment group on average less anxious than the people in the control group by more than we would expect to see just by random chance alone? And so that's sort of our game.
Okay.
That's our game, is saying, well, what would you expect to see just by chance? And is what you've just seen unusual? And if we say, I don't think this would have happened just by chance, then you have now a statistical argument to say, I think I found evidence in favor of this thing. And the issue is that these tools that work very well in textbooks and that work very well when they're used properly and responsibly get misused. And there's pretty good evidence that there's a lot of people out there who are looking at random noise and thinking they're discovering things. They're looking at the clouds and saying, I see a dog, but it's just,
Right.
it's just a cloud. And these aren't homeopaths. These aren't hucksters. These are serious scientists publishing in top journals,
Wow.
Psychological Science, New England Journal of Medicine, the sort of skeptical statistician types will do analyses of an entire body of literature and say, the results that we're seeing follow the sort of pattern we expect to see if this was all just trying to find patterns in random noise as opposed to detecting real things. So that's really interesting to me, because this is like real hard science that you would never think. These are not people who are trying to put one over on anybody. They're not being employed by pharmaceutical companies. They don't have vested interests. They're doing what they think is proper science, and a lot of times it goes wrong.
Yes.
Using the tools that I actually teach my students. So I'm very interested in it because they're using tools that I'm sort of showing to people and saying, hey, here's how you do this. I guess I can't get too technical, but
You can
the
get as
tools can go
technical
wrong.
as you wish.
Anyway.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Now, I must warn you, if we get too technical, imagine bodies slumped in front of the computer,
Right.
sound asleep.
Exactly.
But I'm
Exactly.
interested, that's all that matters.
Well, I'm a teacher, so I'm used to that, right? Yeah. Yeah, so as far as how you try to detect this stuff, so you have oh boy, do I explain what a p-value is? This is good. Have you ever heard of a p-value?
The only p-value I've ever had is when I've had 3 beers.
Right.
Yes.
High p-value, yes. So there's this thing. So this is type of reasoning that's popular in most statistical analysis. There's other schools of thought that say that this form of reasoning is bunk. But the very, very popular form of reasoning that is used throughout psychology and biology and economics and all these big fields with people who are doing research using data and trying to make claims that are supported by statistics. This sort of reasoning that says, I don't think what I saw would have happened just by chance alone. That's the reasoning, and we quantify that in this thing called a p-value. And the p-value is the probability that you would get results like the ones you got just by chance alone. And so if the p-value is very, 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 very small, you say this would have been unlikely to happen due to chance, and so I think it's a real thing. Well, the problem is if you do lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of studies, you're going to get some, spurious false positives.
Yes.
You're going to get something that looks like it shouldn't happen by chance alone, but it actually did happen by chance alone. And if you do enough of these things, and if you give yourself lots and lots of flexibility as to how you're going to analyze the data, what kind of variables you're going to use, how you're going to define your research question. You can define your research question in kind of a vague way, such that once you get the data in your hand, you've got all this flexibility as to how to analyze it.
You can move it any way you wish.
You can do all sorts of things, and then at the end, you can write up this nice finished product that takes the form of a paper that gets published in a journal, and you can say, I meant to do all this all along, and here's my small p-value, and aren't you all impressed? But if researchers have lots and lots of flexibility as to how to analyze data, and they're allowed to not tell anyone when they don't find significant results, is what we call them, statistically significant. So if they're not required in any way, or there's no culture of disclosing all the times you tried to find something and didn't, then you can sort of sit around doing lots of work in your office, and every time something impressive pops out, you turn it into a paper and you go publish it. And that's a recipe for having a big body of literature that's just full of false positives and full of people interpreting random noise as real things. And so we have techniques at looking at the pattern of those p-values.
Okay.
And they're supposed to look a certain way if you're investigating real phenomena, and they're supposed to look a certain way if you're investigating noise.
Okay.
And sometimes it looks more like noise than real phenomena, even though each individual value on itself sounds convincing. Is a thing called like a meta-analysis, where you look at an entire body of literature and you say, what pattern does this big body of results follow? And you could never figure it out by looking at just one, but if you look at all of them, you say, this follows the sort of pattern we expect to see just by random chance.
Okay.
And a lot of people, and it's controversial, because when you go and you tell serious researchers in a field of science that you think a lot of their work is just chasing shadows.
So do you get a lot of pushback?
Well, personally I don't, because I'm not really involved in going after people. But as far as our discipline goes, yes.
Okay.
Yes, especially when you're talking about people who have come up with a very interesting, surprising, counterintuitive results that turn into maybe a story on NPR, or an article in The Atlantic, or a book, a nonfiction
I'm actually
book.
thinking of Wakefield and the whole fiasco that he created.
Well, Wakefield. So I agree with that, but I want to be clear that I'm not talking about Wakefield type people here. I'm talking about serious, responsible.
No, I understand.
scientists. But Wakefield did use a small sample size, and he knew it wasn't randomly taken. He knew who these people were ahead of time. He knew that they were making claims about vaccines, and so that was straight up research misconduct.
Well, he was getting money from the lawyers to make sure that autism was caused by vaccinations.
Right, and he also had a stake in this alternative vaccination.
Yes.
He had a monetary stake as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's straight up research misconduct, and that happens, and we want to do everything we can to get rid of it.
Right.
But I do want to emphasize that this problem is not a problem of research misconduct.
Right. So we here are talking about scientists that are honestly believe that what they're doing is 100% golden.
Yes.
And they just go a little bit off the rails.
They go, and they're not even going that far off the rails. And on some level, it's the fault of people like me who teach these methods. We teach these statistical methods, and they work under certain circumstances. So when you have a very well specified scientific hypothesis that you'd like to test, and you say, here's how I'm going to collect the data. If it's going to be an experiment, you say, here's how I'm going to recruit people, and here's how I'm going to assign them to groups, and here are what the treatments are going to be. Here's what I'm going to measure. Here is exactly how I'm going to analyze it, and here's what I'm going to report. And then you do all of that, and you get a statistically significant result. That's convincing. The problem is when you have a lot of flexibility to try lots of different things and only report your favorite. Or in medicine and epidemiology and like pharmaceutical studies, there's a movement to try to hold researchers sort of, I don't know what the analogy is, hold their feet to the fire, I guess, when it comes to doing the study the way they said they were going to do it. So there actually is, in principle, a culture in medical journals that says you're supposed to pre-register your study. You're saying, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I'm going to measure, here's what I'm going to report. And there is a group of people, actually Ben Goldacre, are you familiar with Ben Goldacre, who does bad science?
Yes.
So he's a member of this group called the Compare Project. And what they do is they look at the published results from studies that were pre-registered, and they compare what the researchers said they were going to do with what they ended up reporting. And if they don't report things that they said they were going to report, or they do report things they didn't say they were going to report, and they don't disclose that in the paper and don't give a reason for it, then they write a letter to the journal and they say, this is our finding.
Yeah.
We are part of this project that's supposed to make sure researchers do what they say they were going to do. This journal has signed on to this statement of principle, and we want to make people aware that what's in this published result is not the same thing methodologically as what they said was going to happen ahead of time. And the reason, and some people say that sounds like nitpicking. Oh, you're really nitpicking about methodology and all this. The problem is deviating from what you said you were going to do. Probably the reason that happens is to make the results look more impressive than they would have otherwise. Probably the reason people deviate from their original methodology is they tried their original methodology, they didn't get the results they were looking for, but then they noticed, oh, well, wait, if we take this other variable that we weren't really thinking about, it turns out that is statistically significant. And unfortunately, the way statistics sometimes gets taught, researchers don't realize that that's more likely to be a false positive. They think they're discovering. They're just out looking for real phenomena, and people say, well, I'm just going to let the data speak to me. I'm going to let the data tell me what the data wants to say. Well, that's sort of like saying, I'm going to let the clouds speak to me and let the clouds tell me what they want to say. Like, if you take that approach...
I didn't know you were a psychic.
Let me tell you about your cloud. No.
Oh, please, please.
Yeah, so if you take that approach, there's just a much greater chance you're going to be chasing shadows and publishing. And so big examples. Have you ever heard of the hurricanes versus himicanes thing that came out a couple of years ago?
Oh, that somewhere in the back of my mind, I'm remembering something about it.
Some researchers said that they found evidence that hurricanes named after women, female-named hurricanes, caused more death than male-named hurricanes. And their hypothesis was, people aren't as frightened by feminine-sounding names, and to the point where they would not prepare themselves properly for a hurricane and end up dying. It's an incredible claim, but it's also attractive. It's sort of weird and counterintuitive, but sort of makes some sense, and is very dramatic, and got picked up by a bunch of news outlets, by the popular press, and the university that these scientists worked for made a press release and presented their results in a very sort of credulous manner. And then some fuddy-duddy statisticians who are just no fun at all reanalyzed their data and said, you've made a bunch of mistakes and there's really nothing there.
Yeah.
But now their reputations are at stake. Now they've gone on NPR and talked about gendered hurricanes and deaths and all this, and so they can't go back and say, oh, dang it, we did the analysis
Fooled ya.
wrong. Yeah, because it wasn't fooled you. They really thought they had found something. They still do believe they found something.
Oh dear.
There have been TED Talks that there's this very popular one about power posing. How if you hold yourself in like a powerful position, and it's supposed to like release more testosterone and make you more confident, and that's going to make you you're going to do better when you go to talk to your boss if you practice this power pose. And the statistics behind it are crap
And nonsense.
They're nonsense. But this resulted in a TED Talk. What are you going to go back? You're going to say, oh well, some statisticians explained to me how my methodology was really lousy. No, you're going to defend that research.
Right.
And this is being presented to people as very, very serious science. And
That's dangerous.
yeah.
That really is dangerous,
Yeah.
because I remember back in the early days of Rational Alchemy, it was some little machine that came out of Australia that was meant to give you incredible balance and incredible strength. I don't know whether you remember
No,
this
I
or
don't.
not. And it was debunked and debunked and debunked, and still people bought it
Yeah.
and ate it up. And it
course.
was proven to be just total
course.
nonsense.
Yeah.
But getting back to your topic, you kind of hinted at this, and I want to make sure I'm clear. So in economics, for instance, you have different schools of economics.
Sure.
Is it the same in statistics, different schools of statistics?
To an extent, it's not as dramatic as in
Okay.
economics. But yeah, there are. So the type of reasoning I've been telling you about, where you say, "Here is my data. How likely do I think it would have been to obtain this data by chance alone?" That's a school. That's part of a school called classical statistics or frequentist statistics. There's another school called Bayesian statistics,
Okay.
where it's Bayesian reasoning, and Bayesianism isn't just statistics, but they do a lot of statistics. And that school of thought says that the frequentist school is kind of garbage. And so there are internal arguments, but but they can get along. Like there are plenty of statisticians who say, well, I'll use this approach for this kind of problem and this approach for
Okay.
other kind of problem. So it is cordial. We invite, at my department, we have people who really do frequentist stuff and people who do Bayesian stuff, and they get along with each other. And we invite, so there are very serious philosophical fights, but it's not like the Keynesians and the monetarists or
Right.
something like that
Yes.
in economics.
And the Austrian School of Economics.
Right,
Right.
right.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
good.
think
Because
maybe-
everyone really is trying to get the same thing. They're really wanting the same answer, aren't
Well,
they?
we're trying to get. Our job is to take data and turn it into useful knowledge, hopefully, or
Right.
to take observations and say, what does this tell me about the reality out there that produced this data? And so we're sort of going after a similar thing. And I guess the other reason why there's not so much brutal fighting within statistics as there is in some other fields is that it's very easy to check and see which methods work better.
Oh, okay.
This is not hard. It's not hard to say, here is a certain type of problem. If I go at it with this method versus this method versus this method, which one outperforms the other? That's not very difficult to do. So
Right.
so if somebody comes up with a better method, the people with the old method can say, here's why I think mine is good, but there's fairly, and I don't want to say perfectly objective, but there are fairly objective ways
Okay.
of saying this one's the way to go.
So it's very much a black and white.
It's not quite black and
quite, a
white
little bit of
because
gray in
there
there, but-
there are some philosophical things. So one methodology treats reality a certain way and one treats another way. So they lie upon very different philosophical foundations.
Okay.
One of them is there is sort of like this fixed truth out there, and like if you have a hypothesis, it's either true or it's false, kind of a thing. And the other one sees reality as being a little bit more fluid, and we talk about the probabilities of things being true or false, as opposed to. So the frequentist school says your data is random, but the truth is fixed, and so we can only make statements about what's the probability of getting your data if the truth were like this versus like this. The Bayesian school says. No, it's actually meaningful to talk about probabilities of your hypothesis being true. What's the probability your hypothesis is true versus it's false? And you go with that as your model, as opposed to the classical school that says there's no such thing as a hypothesis, as the probability that a hypothesis is true or false. It's either true or false.
Okay.
And so the philosophical underpinning actually affects the mathematics. So if you really disagree with the philosophy, then you could get very impassioned as to which way you should go. Or if you find a certain form of mathematics more appealing than the other, you could get. But at the end of it all, we are trying to achieve measurable outcomes. And so you can test methods against each other and say this one clearly does a better job.
Of course, more importantly, truthful outcomes.
We would hope. One would hope.
One would hope.
One would hope.
I've just remembered, actually, that wasn't a machine. It was that silly thing. It was the laser patterned copper disc that you put on your wrist, and they were selling these things for about $25 each.
Right. Oh, what a great deal for what, maintaining your balance and getting more strength. Only
More
25
strength,
bucks.
maintaining your balance.
Oh,
and,
I'd pay 50 for that.
Would you?
Yeah.
It's lucky I've got one in the car for you. And we've got it on tape. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You just have to step back and go, right. It's like the old thing about copper, you know, wearing copper rings is meant to help.
Oh, yes,
and
yes.
stuff like that.
Yes.
And yeah. So, going away from your master of expertise and coming onto the skeptical front,
Yeah.
can you think of anything that's happened recently that's made you sit at home and go, what the?
That's not related to the things that I actually study from day to day. What has popped out that really bothered me lately?
And if it's nothing, it's nothing.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, you know, I guess being on Facebook, you know, I have friends that post silly things.
Okay.
But it's nothing more than just some more crap from natural news
Right.
or whatever. I can't think of any big event that's
Right.
happened recently.
Okay.
Do you have anything in mind?
Well, no, actually, not really a thing in mind, but ever since Ted Cruz hit the big screen, he calls himself an evangelical Christian. And I have
Right.
been trying to find out what exactly an evangelical Christian is.
Oh, boy, I should know that. I'm from the South.
Because everything that I think about this is that they are a group of Christians that have never once read the Bible. And they're making it up as they go. But I could be wrong on
I don't
that.
think that's a tenet of evangelical Christianity. I always thought of it as for Christians who are wanting to spread their word a little bit more than some others. But there's lots of schools that want to spread their word.
Okay.
I don't know, or is it? I associate it with the born again types as well. So I always
Well,
think like born again
have you
evangelical.
noticed the born again types have sort of died out of fashion?
Yes. Yes.
So we don't hear much about them any longer.
I hear about them in the plaza at CSU because they go stand on a
okay.
rock and shout about how they were lost, just like all of you horrible fornicating college students, and then they found Jesus, and shouldn't you do the same? So I do hear from them.
They're obviously not smoking the right
because I'm
local homegrown weed.
A college campus is just it's very attractive to if you're a deeply religious person who wants to save people from hell, then a college campus seems like a great place to go, because look at all these kids. They're all smoking pot and drinking and having sex with each other. I mean, they're all going to hell. We've got to save as many as we possibly can. So
I suppose that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, it does. If you take the nonsensical prior as being true, then the logical thing to do is stand on a rock in the plaza of CSU and shout it.
So it's a bit like Speaker's Corner in London then on a Sunday morning, where they all stand on their soapboxes and spout
Yes.
whatever they wish to spout.
Yes. So I guess to get back, I do associate that with evangelical Christianity as well, but I don't. Yeah, I guess I don't know how it's supposed to be defined.
Yeah, because where I'm confused is, I mean, whether you believe in it or not. I mean, I'm an atheist.
Yeah, likewise.
So
Yeah.
I don't believe in this, but I have read pretty much all of the Bible, cover to cover. Okay, and the four Gospels, for instance. Well, let's forget the fact that one was a copy of the other, was a copy of another, was a copy of another. Let's forget that, and then localized for the region that it was written in.
I gotta say, as an aside, as a statistician, I would want to find a way to combine them to come up with one gospel that's an anyway. Sorry.
But yes, that's fine, and you could actually do that, even though there are lots of differences between the way they tell the same story.
Right.
But for instance, Jesus is out in the desert, and I'm thinking of the loaves and the fishes story, where they're all out in the desert, they're all getting a bit peckish, it's lunchtime, you know, they're looking at their sundials, wondering how long he's going to be going for. And he then says, does anyone brought food? And a few people come up, and he's got his, was it two loaves and 5 fishes, or was it 5 fishes and 2 loaves? I can never remember. Anyway, and all of a sudden he's able to spread that amongst the entire crowd to give them their midday snack. Isn't that socialism?
Oh, but if you
Isn't that
if you
socialism?
just make it out of nothing, though.
He wasn't.
Oh no.
He wasn't. He was collecting from the rich who had brought stuff and handing it
Oh,
out.
so this wasn't a miracle.
This wasn't
I don't know as
no.
much you know more
Well,
about the Bible than I do.
it all depends on whether you actually think that he only had 5 loaves and 2 fishes.
Right.
You know, because as our religious teacher at school, how about that? I'm from England. We learnt religion at school. We learnt most of the religions at school. But the way he explained it was that what Jesus did was, he said, back then you never went out into the desert with nothing. You didn't. You took something. But of course, a lot of the poor wouldn't have had anything to take.
Right.
And the whole miracle was actually being able to get everyone to give and to share.
Yes.
He heals the sick on about 7 or 8 occasions.
Yes.
I don't remember him asking for a shekel. Isn't that socialized medicine?
Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you,
You know-
what. So I'll tell you what the I shouldn't say I'll tell you what Ted Cruz would say, but somebody a little bit more thoughtful than Ted Cruz on that side would say, they would say, oh no, that's not socialism, that's private charity, right? They'd say these are people voluntarily helping one another, and socialism is when the big bad government comes in and
In that particular case, Jesus was the government.
yeah.
In that particular
Could be.
case, and there's all these things all the way through where, you know, Jesus was either the very first communist, or at worst the very first socialist to be
Right.
talked about, printed. And of course, the other thing that I've always found fascinating, looking at all of this, is that you've got all of these ultra right-wing Republicans. They have some of the best social medicine plans in America and the best pension plans in America. If they're allowed to have them, why can't we?
Yeah.
Think about that. It's just wrong, man. It's wrong. Anyway, Ben, we've come to the end of our time.
Okay.
I want to
Right.
thank
That
you
was so fast.
so much
It's all gone.
for driving that long, winding 287 from Fort Collins. Oh, my goodness. Ben, thank you
Nigel,
so
it's a
much.
great pleasure.
That was a lot of fun. And thank you so much for talking so in-depth about statistics. I got a funny feeling we scratched the surface.
Yes.
We're going to have to get you back.
This is what I do. For 2.5 hours a day, I talk about the stuff to a classroom full of students. So
That are all nodding
It's a great
off.
pleasure. Yes. Time to wake up, everybody.
Ben, once again, thank you.
Thanks, Nigel.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me on another episode of Rational Alchemy. This is Nigel Aves, your host, signing off.
And fun.
Thank you.
Knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun. The only things better than love and happiness are knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun. The only things better than love and happiness are knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun. Knowledge and fun.
The Fox network has sunk to a new low.